Hi, my name is Mark Belden. I'm a consultant with Nor-Cal EMS. Today I'm going to be talking about the transition from a multi-casualty incident, or MCI, to a disaster medical response. This is a unique program or guidance, as these two things don't typically go together. But however, in the rural nature of the response in the Nor-Cal EMS region and in Northern California in general, this is something that is a very real likelihood. So what is an MCI, or a disaster medical response? An MCI is an incident that overwhelms local resources. That's a fairly broad statement, and it means something different for every different response organization, as each individual response organization can get overwhelmed by different levels of a response. Whereas in a larger metropolitan area, they could easily handle a bus accident of 20 to 30 victims, whereas that would decimate some of the rural providers that only have one EMS unit on the road for that day. Some of the examples of what we might see in our local areas: obviously a bus crash, any transportation incident involving planes, trains, automobiles, school buses, also wildfires. They may rip through an area quickly, causing people to exacerbate their medical problems, resulting in a medical MCI, or causing mass burn injuries or other types of injuries as a result of mass and immediate evacuations as a result of the fire. So the framework for this program, again, covering those rural challenges that we have, coverage areas. We cover really a lot of dirt. There are a spattering of communities throughout Northern California, but there are large gaps in between those that are highly traveled thoroughfares through Northern California, traveling both north, south, east, and west. The other challenge are EMS providers. There's a challenge with those EMS providers in rural areas of getting the personnel that they need, and also responding to one incident at a time. If they have one unit on the road, that's all they can handle. And if they get an incident with more than 3 or 5 patients, it can overwhelm them locally while they wait for mutual aid resources to respond, or they may need to do what are called round robins, where they're transporting patients to the hospital and then going back to the scene to get more. The other challenge are the receiving facilities. Some of our facilities in Northern California, again, serve a large area with very few resources within their facility. Some of the emergency rooms are 2 to 3, maybe 4 beds. And again, that's serving a very large geographic community. This is a map provided by the Sierra Sac Valley EMS agency of the providers within Northern California. And as you can see, on the green counties are the SSV counties, and the white counties are the Nor-Cal counties, with the exception of right along the coastal range, and that's North Coast EMS. But there are not a lot of ambulance providers in the more rural areas. Where you see the highest concentrations of providers are through usually the main thoroughfares, for example, I-5 or 99, going down along the east side of the valley. Additional resources can be sometimes hours away. If there is a large accident on one of these more rural highways, providers could be responding for an hour or two to get there, and those folks on scene are waiting that time. Air resources, we do have a lot of air resources in Northern California. However, they can be hampered by weather, and during the winter seasons, or if there's a storm that comes through, that can really limit their availability in the more rural areas getting over the mountain passes. The purpose of this plan is to bring agencies together. This plan, like many others, won't succeed unless these operational areas or counties get together and plan. They must involve all provider agencies within that operational area. There are a lot of existing plans. There's the Region 3 MCI Plan Manual 1, Operations, Manual 2 for the control facility, the State of California Disaster Medical Response Plan, as well as the Modoc Plan. Those are all good plans that can assist you in developing a local response to help mitigate the MCI to medical disaster. And all of these plans use SIMS, the Standardized Emergency Management System. Within the operational areas, you should be aware of your local threats, and most of the public health departments within your operational area have determined what their primary hazards or threats are. Some of those include wildfires, which we know can decimate portions of our area. Floods, usually not during the drought conditions, but if heavy rainfall combined with a past major wildfire can cause landslides, debris slides, and choke off roads and major access points. Our extreme heat and cold emergencies, again, landslides, earthquakes, not as prevalent, the damaging earthquakes in far northern California, but again, they still can impact us. Eruptions, we haven't seen that since the early 1900s with Mount Lassen, but we do have active volcanoes in our area. And obviously the big one are the transportation emergencies, with whether it be on the highway, freeways, rail, or even aircraft. There are some, we're a major thoroughfare for aircraft traveling north and south along the West Coast. Things can happen and they need to make an emergency landing, and that is something that would impact us all. Some of the things we might see. Usually if there's a large meteor coming our way, we're going to know about it. NASA does a pretty good job keeping up on those things. It's very seldom that something surprises us, but there was that incident a few years ago in Russia where there was a meteor exploded over a community and busted out a lot of glass and caused injuries. I don't believe any deaths were reported, but again, that was a very interesting incident. On the upper right-hand corner of your screen there, the Highway 3 slide out, which isolated Trinity Center and sent them traveling several hours to get out of their community. Wildfires, not that we would be impacted much by tsunamis here, but we may see an influx of people as a result of a tsunami impacting the coast. Large storms, we do get some large storms that come through here, not quite hurricane strength. But we do get some large storms that come through and produce heavy rains, lightning. We have had some tornadoes in our region. Rail car fires with bulk and crude moving through our area. That is a high probability that there may be a derailment with fire. Again, tornadoes and earthquakes. So one thing about plans is they do no good sitting on a shelf collecting dust, as we know. They should be in place, but you have to know who's going to use them and how to use them. These plans that have already been developed are very solid plans and have worked well with many incidents within our region, but not a lot of people know about them or actually take the time to read them cover to cover. It can be daunting. Some of the plans are long, but there's a lot of good information in there about what resources you can use to help with your response. You also have to know when to use them. For day-to-day activities, the plans can sit there and they can wait. But for the non-day-to-day activities like an MCI or a medical disaster, that's when these plans need to be utilized. Now, is that the time to open them up and start reading? No. You need to review these plans. You need to train with these plans and make sure all of the key players within your operational area are aware of what are in these plans, what they contain. So who do you plan with within your operational area? And this is really important that you don't try and isolate yourself to just with first responders, because there are a lot more agencies within your operational area that can help you plan for these types of incidents. Obviously, fire, your EMS providers, law enforcement, public health is a great resource. Your LEMSA, your Local Emergency Medical Services Authority, Nor-Cal EMS or SSV EMS, Red Cross. They can help with long-term planning and care and assistance for those people that have been impacted by this event. Your dispatch centers, which may be contained within law enforcement, maybe the Sheriff's Department or Fire Department, or maybe a third-party JPA type of dispatch centers. Think of anybody else within your operational area. How about the hospitals, the emergency rooms? Those folks are going to be obviously impacted if there is a major incident within your operational area. And they should be in on the planning so they're aware of the possibilities or what their role may be in this event. How often should you all meet? You really should meet frequently at first. Get that schedule down. Make sure it's something that's comfortable for everybody, because like anything, if you make it too daunting, nobody's going to want to attend, and you really do need key players to hang in there during this process. So what should you discuss at first? Roles and responsibility. The ICS system is key. There's the command structure. The incident commander is going to be the overall authority for the scene, and that's typically lies with the agency who has overall investigative authority for the incident. Highways and freeways is typically CHP and unincorporated roads. All other usually lies with the fire department. And if it is something big on a major highway or freeway, CHP and the fire department can implement unified command where they jointly run the incident. Again, this is done in pre-planning, not really on the side of the road. It's not a good place to figure that out. So the response, where is the incident located? You all know your operational areas, and when you hear the cross streets, you know, whoa, that's ways out there, or that's got potential to be something big. How big does it appear to be? And where are you going to get additional resources? If you're a single ambulance responding to a major incident on a rural highway and you know your closest providers are an hour plus out, you really should go ahead and request them. Don't wait another 30 minutes until you get at scene to figure out you've got something big and now you've still got to wait another hour. Go ahead and request those additional resources. If you arrive at scene and it's nothing or you can handle it, you can cancel those additional resources. What are your additional resources that you might need? Helicopters, if they can fly in, if the weather's good. If you're dealing with a bus crash, order another bus. They can be very helpful for getting rid of your minor patients or getting them off the scene appropriately. And also, do you have the supplies necessary to manage an MCI? Do you have an MCI trailer within your county? And if so, how do you request it and how does it arrive at scene? Does it have to be towed? Is it driven? Do you need a disaster medical support unit out of Shasta or Butte County or one of the southern counties that has a lot of supplies on it that you may need to help you manage an MCI? When you get an incident that is of great size and scope, where you've got a number of victims, I can't really put a number to it because each operational area is going to be affected differently by these responses. If you do have an incident that does require using resources out of your local area or out of your operational area, you need to contact your LIMSA duty officer. And each LIMSA has 24-hour on-duty coverage. You just need to find out which number, and it'll be on your LIMSA's website of their duty officer program. Where they can help you is they will notify the MOOC. The MOOC is the Medical Health Operational Area Coordinator, and they usually lie within your public health department. The state has given them 17 essential functions. I'm going to cover a few of those that would apply to this situation where you have a large-scale MCI that you're not going to be able to mitigate anytime soon, where you may have victims sitting at scene for hours or even potentially days that you care for them until they get transported out of the area. Some of those functions are assessment of needs. What do you need? What does the community need to respond to this event? They can help coordinate resources. They can help the control facility with patient distribution and medical evaluation. There's going to be a point in time during the incident where you just have no place to send your remaining victims at scene, and you communicate that with your control facility. Well, the MOOC can step in and help with that, and they can find alternate locations for your patients to go to. They can coordinate with inpatient and emergency care providers in other areas, as well as within your operational area if there's other facilities that can be contacted. Coordination of out-of-hospital medical care. coordination and integration with fire agency personnel, resources, and fire-based EMS. So if you're typically deal with private operator EMS, they can help integrate with fire EMS, as well as coordinate with other non-fire-based EMS. So within this response, is the incident larger than your operational area can handle? Sometimes these MCIs may be 10 patients, which are larger than some operational areas can handle, and they do a very fine job of finding ways to get these patients transported out of there. But tack on another 10, 20, maybe even 30 patients if it's a full bus. Say it's one of those casino buses, and those don't travel during normal business hours through our region. They travel during off hours through our region to get to their destination during the normal business hours. So you may have a bus that has 30, 40, maybe even 50 occupants that rolls down a ravine. Are you prepared to handle that? Do you know what you're going to do with all of those patients for the hour that you may be with them until other resources start to arrive? And those patients, they're not all going to be immediates, they're not all going to be delayed, and they're not all going to be minors. You're going to have a mix of all of them. And how are we pretty much know how you're going to get the most immediate off of there, but what about the rest? And how long are those minor patients going to have to wait for care or extended care? That's definitely when you need to contact your LIMS and advise them of your situation so they can activate the Modoc. If you're getting resources from out of your operational area, you will also need to notify your RDMHS, your Regional Disaster Medical Health Specialist. They can assist in getting medical resources from outside of your operational area. So as this MCI progresses and you're finding that some of your patients may have to be at scene for extended periods of time, how are you going to protect them from the elements? How are you going to take care of their wounds? Do you have the resources available for that? If you don't, you should, through the MOAC program, ask for help from the Public Health Department. They typically have shelters that they can bring out, cots. They have predetermined sites for field treatment area, or FTSs. These areas you can take your patients to, and it gives them a place to get out of the elements, maybe begin some minor wound care. These conditions are going to be fairly austere to start with, which means it's not going to be an emergency room, but your emergency rooms are impacted by the other higher acuity patients that have been transported off the incident. Now, some of these conditions are not what most people would expect, and you just have to tell them and explain to them what's going on and why they're where they are, and that they will get further care and treatment as soon as it becomes available, as soon as we can get either it's a large transportation or the facilities in the area open up to be able to handle the care that they need. So basic needs for field treatment site setup. Really the first thing you need to know about field treatment site setups is there are actually, most public health departments already have field treatment site pre-designated within their operational area. That's pretty helpful. It may not be right next to your scene. It may be an area where you can use a bus to transport your minor victims from and get them set up in the field treatment site. Typically the field treatment sites are going to be in a flat area and easily accessible for transport providers. They may be established at the scene or a local hospital receiving facility. And as I mentioned before, there may be most likely pre-designated sites for these field treatment sites within your operational area. The one thing with setting up a field treatment site is you need to make sure it's not going to be impacted. If it is at scene, it's not going to be impacted by ongoing scene activities. Remember, if this is a major transportation incident involving a bus or a train, there's going to be a lot of things going on there. And as soon as the patients and the victims are removed, the investigation starts. So you want to make sure that you're not going to be impacting the investigation at all. And most of all, they're not going to be impacting you with the resources that they have at the scene. Communication. We all know how important communication is. And that, how important communication is. If there's a communication failure early on in the incident, it's going to be very hard to recover from. Just if you're not ordering the resources that you need right away, your incident's going to be delayed, and you're going to be delayed getting your most sickest patients off the scene. As the incident progresses, communication with the incident commander is paramount. If you've requested that the Modoc be advised and that they're assisting you with their 17 essential functions, as well as the RDMHS for medical resources, you need to make sure that the IC is aware of this. This is not a common occurrence in the incident command structure and may be foreign to your incident commander. So you need to advise them of the activities that are going on and how the public health department is assisting you with the resources. Resources should be ordered through the incident commander, but you need to advise them on how you're able to get these resources. And it's the same thing if you are using a control facility. Keep the incident commander updated in your patient triage and tracking activities so they're aware. Again, this is an area that they're not familiar with and kind of sits off to the side in the ICS structure. As you receive intelligence from your public health department, the MOOC or the LIMSA, you need to make sure that the incident commander is aware of that as well. If you get ETAs of resources or when you might be able to get patients off the scene or victims off the scene, you need to make sure that that's relayed to the incident commander. You should be attending any briefings that are held regarding the incident. This will help the incident commander and the plan section in developing the incident action plan for continued mitigation of the incident. The incident action plan, it can be written or it can be verbal, but there should be a plan in place to help folks understand what the mission is to help mitigate that event. So in summary, it's going to be difficult for any single agency to be able to handle all aspects of an incident that would begin as an MCI and transition to a medical disaster. These are very, very large incidents. There's several tiers in the response, as I've described before. There are agencies within your operational area that can help you. They have the knowledge, they have the skill, they know of these other plans that are out there that can help you all in mitigating this type of a response. Mitigating this type of an incident. As I mentioned before, there are several plans out there, and I strongly encourage those watching this video to seek out those plans. They're easily accessible on the web. The first one is the Region 3 MCI Plan Manual 1 Operations. That gives you a kind of a high overhead on how to run and how to mitigate an MCI. Manual 2 is the Control Facility Plan, and that is how to deal with a control facility and how to establish communications with them and how to report your patient triage and treatment activities. And it's their responsibility to come up with a destination for those patients. That really is helpful as it takes that responsibility off of you in the field so that you can deal with more of the patient treatment activities and then loading and sending those ambulances off to pre-designated facilities or facilities you were told to transport to by the control facility. Another plan is the California Disaster Medical Response Plan. This is a very robust plan. It's a fairly thick, long plan. It does take you do need to just sit down and read through it, but you get an understanding of the resources that are available to you through your operational area, through the MOOC, and through your LIMSA duty officer, and through your RDMHS. All of these resources are available to you. The important thing is knowing what those are and affecting the response of those. You really need to get them on the road early to help you mitigate your scene as quickly as possible. The other one is the MOOC Plan Manual for the state of California. Again, it goes into a little bit deeper about, again, resources that are available to you and those resources that can help you get supplies, additional transport units, can really help you mitigate these larger scenes. They're commonly deployed for known events. So if we do have, usually flooding isn't going to be a surprise thing for us. We're going to know that there's a big storm coming and that there's going to be a lot of precipitation with that. Those are things we can plan for. And the Modoc will put procedures or will put things in place to help mitigate the flooding. Open shelters, open alternate care sites, which is a longer extended field treatment site, if you will. But they have that knowledge, they have that experience to help and to bring all of those resources together for you. My experience has been most public health departments would love to be involved with EMS, would love to be involved with fire, but there has to be somebody there to pick up the phone and make that call. As I mentioned earlier in this, planning is paramount. Don't wait till your incident has happened to call up and start requesting resources or opening the plan and start reading it to try and figure out what to do. It does take time to get these wheels in motion. I've worked on some that have taken years to really kind of get where we're comfortable doing what we're doing and having the interaction with the agencies to getting that level of cooperation. It does take time to break down some of those barriers. I kind of refer to it as a patchless society. It's when we get past the badges on our shirts or the patches on our sleeves and just work on these plans as a community, because that's really what we're serving as our community. So if we can come together as a community, work together, work through these plans, and get a basic understanding of what our roles are, it'll help us mitigate these incidents much better in the future. Thank you for your time. I hope I've covered everything appropriately for your tests that you're going to be taking. 5 simple questions for you. If you have any questions, again, my name is Mark Belden and my email address is mark.belden@outlook.com. Thank you for your time.